So I'm going to introduce our three different speakers, and we're going to do a stop and a reshare of their presentation in between each one. But we thought if we held questions till the end, sometimes the next speaker might be answering a question you have about some travel logistics or about a certain mushroom, but we'll definitely save time at the end for any questions you have. And if you feel like you're going to forget your question and you want to type it in the chat, we will go visit the chat before the end as well. So that's how we're going to do that. I'm going to, in the order of speaking, I'm going to introduce our speakers. First is Ron Spinoza, who has been a member of MMS for over 30 years. He's a past president and actually the current chair of our education committee. He's one of our club's key identifiers and received the MMS Lifetime Achievement Award in 2009. He's also been a NAMA member for a lot of years and was the cultivation committee chair for a lot of those years. He's a winner of the Knight in Service Award from NAMA in 2011. Aaron Berg is also on the MMS board. He says his mushroom obsession started in 2007 when morels came up in his backyard after cutting down an old American elm tree. He's been a member of MMS for 5 years and a member of NAMA for 2 years. He's the recording secretary on the MMS board and our interim DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. He led the Lake Carlos State Park Camping Foray in 2023 and is an active member in our funga group. And Heather Erickson has been a member of the MMS since 2018 and a member of our board since 2020. She's currently the events committee chair and does our newsletter. She enjoys all aspects of mycology, including its rich history. And if you want to check out our YouTube channel, she just did a great presentation on the history of our club. We're celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. And a lot of that history, she talks about the history of mycological societies in general. And I found it really fascinating. So yeah, thank you guys for being here and sharing your time and talents and experiences.
Here is our beautiful logo for the NAMA Mexico Foray 2023. NAMA has done forays in many, many states, just about every state, but there's a part of North America that we have never had a foray in, and that is a big part of North America, which is Mexico. So this was the first regional NAMA foray in Mexico, and maybe the first of more to come. So as you can see, well, first of all, we were in Mexico, in the state of Mexico is where we were doing our foraying. And as you can see, there's a number of organizations besides NAMA, universities, educational and cultural organizations that have contributed to this project. And I'll have to say that I have attended at least a few mycotourism expeditions, and this one was way beyond my expectations. It was just fantastic. It was super well organized. And so I would like to, it was a privilege for me to be able to join this group. And I'd like to express gratitude to NAMA and to the organizers, the main organizers, Zach and Kimberly Hunter, who run the Fungivore group, which does mycotourism. And I'd like to also acknowledge we had some of the top mycologists in Mexico, as well as some of the top chefs. And also, I'm really grateful to the indigenous communities and the foraging guides that they provided for us, and they were welcoming, and they took us on their ancestral hunting grounds, which was a real privilege. Okay, so I think now I'm gonna just do a little orientation. So we flew into Mexico City. We were there for a day, had a great time, some great food. Then the next day we went to this fabulous hotel in the beautiful wooded area, Hotel Rodavento. And then while we were there, I mean, the highlight for me and for most of us, I think, were the forays that we went to in some of the indigenous communities. And we went to two of them. One was San Francisco. I don't know. Can you see my pointer? Is that showing up?
Yes,
Anyway.
we can.
Okay. So, okay. Here's the hotel, so you can see where we are. We took a bus, or not a bus. We got a ride to these different places, and that's San Francisco, and here is San Antonio. Okay. All right. So when we started off, we all got a copy of this wonderful journalist, a special issue of Hongos de Mexico, Archaeologia journal. And it just had a wealth of information in it. And that's what I'm going to be using to cover some of the stuff coming up here. But, it starts out with a whole history of mushrooms in Mexico, which, goes back to the conquistadors, but even before that. And then there is the ethnomycology. We have history, we have ethnomycology, we have information on a number of indigenous communities, which includes the info on edible, medicinal, toxic mushrooms. And there's some really good articles on the sustainability of habitats in Mexico and the preservation of indigenous cultures, and articles on how mushroom foraging can contribute to that cause and to the economies of the indigenous communities. So, okay, wait a minute. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about Mexican mycocultural heritage. So this involves foraging by indigenous people, which has been going on, of course, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's important to point out that besides the nutritional value of mushrooms that is pretty obvious, it's also a primary economic activity. So these forage mushrooms are marketed locally and beyond by indigenous people. And it is the indigenous foragers who have the greatest knowledge of wild mushrooms in Mexico, which would include identification and which ones are edible, which are toxic, or which are can be used ritually in ceremonial settings, as well as habitat, which would include what trees are associated with the mushroom, the soil, and the season. So those are the people that have the knowledge. And so of the communities in Mexico, indigenous communities, there's 68 in Mexico, of which 7 states are in the state of, 7 communities are in the state of Mexico. And each community has a unique relationship with the different species of mushrooms. And both men and women are foragers, and they accompanied us on our forays. However, it is women who have the main responsibility for preserving and transmitting the knowledge of that heritage. Okay. So what are some of the mushrooms that are being eaten and used by the indigenous people? Well, in Mexico, there's more than 400 species of wild mushrooms that are traditionally consumed, making Mexico the second country with the highest number of species consumed in the world. And maybe some of you can guess number one. It happens to be China. So of the 400 species, there's 100 toxic not and non-fatal. Okay, I'm gonna and something that really interested me was there's just this whole list of mushrooms that I have up here that are mushrooms that are eaten by the indigenous folks that we don't eat. In fact, we would turn away from. Like you can see, look at all of those helvelas. Here's a gyromitra, ramarias, and then, well, with the stars here, this is one of the this is the Mexican Caesar, which is now being called Amanita basii, and it is just a beautiful, big, fat, wonderful mushroom, and that's one of the favorites. They do like a lot of ramarias, which we tend to shun. And let's see. Oh, there's one up here. There is, I found it interesting. There is actually an oyster mushroom, Pleurotus opportunitae, that grows on the dead wood of prickly pear cactus trees. And here's a mushroom, Russell breviipes, that we tend to ignore unless it's been parasitized by Hypomyces lactiflorium. But they really like that mushroom. They eat it a lot because it is a big mushroom. It provides a lot of meat. Okay, and here's another one of their favorites is the fried chicken mushroom, Lyophilum decastes, and even some of these boletes with the red pores, which we tend to avoid. And then finally, Turbinellus floccosus, which is the scaly vase or the woolly chanterelle, one that we say gives you GI problems, but they really like that mushroom, and I'll be talking a little more about that as we go on. Whoa. Okay, so here it is. Look at that. That's just a wonderful, beautiful mushroom, and it is delicious. So this is, I believe, one of the mycologists, and you can see in his basket, these are, I think, Boletus pinophilus, that we're finding a lot of those. Okay, and I'd like to introduce a group that was from the area, Ongeros Shiekaku, if I could pronounce this, quite a mouthful there. But anyway, that group was started by a young lady who was a member of the Tliwaka Shihakaku ethnic group. And she went to college and got herself a degree, I believe, in sustainable development, and came back and started this group, which this is a pamphlet that we got that I'm going to be looking into in a minute. But so this group is responsible for opening up the area for mycotourism for the benefit of the indigenous folks that live there. So I'm going to take a look in the pamphlet here. So here are some of the mushrooms that these are all edible mushrooms, and is kind of interesting. If you look, I don't know if you can see it, maybe, something I can do, let's see if this will work, is do a zoom. So you can see like all of these edible mushrooms have this particular prefix on it, cho something, I don't know how to pronounce it. But anyway, so the edible mushrooms have a prefix that goes with every one of their mushrooms. And then the toxic ones also have another prefix. So when you say the name of the mushroom, you know whether it's edible or toxic. So I've got some arrows just to point out some of the ones that are surprising to me that are, are popular edible mushrooms there. So you can see here's the Helvelas, but then here is one of the false morels, Gyromitra infula, which we would avoid because it could be toxic or even fatal. However, they regard it as an edible mushroom, but like many of these mushrooms that maybe that we don't eat them, they have special ways of preparing them that makes them okay or good. And so with the Gyromitra, they like the Finns also will boil it outdoors for a couple of times, pour the water off, and then eat it. Okay, and let's see, what else have we here? Oh yeah, so here's Boletus luridus, one of the red pored blue staining boletes that we tend to avoid. Okay, yeah, so here I'm going to do a zoom here. Okay, here's one that in Minnesota we do find this one, but we don't bother to eat it. Clitosabe jiba. They will eat pretty much all of the species of Lacaria, including Lacaria, the amethyst Lacaria amethystina. And here is the Turbinellus flaccosus. I'm going to say some more about that in a minute. And then we have some of the Ramarias. Now we find Ramaria stricta here in Minnesota. Some of the field guides call it the bitter coral, but they eat a lot of coral. In fact, in some of our meals, there were quite a few corals there. Okay. And then let's see if I can come on. Isn't this moving? Oh, I know why, because I got to go like this. Okay, and russulas. Look at the russulas. It's kind of funny. These russulas, they call it, this is pig snout. And this is one I found really interesting because this is one of the blackening russulas. This is the one that gets the powder cap parasites on it, and we certainly wouldn't eat it, but they do. And then here I mentioned before, one of their favorites is Russula brevipees. Here's more another Helvela, and another yellow coral, Ramaria aurea. Okay. All right, and look at this feast. So this is on the last day of at the hotel. We had this big feast in the afternoon, evening. And so we had all of these mushrooms were brought in by indigenous foragers. And so I'm going to zoom in on some of these and just point out what some of these are. So, okay, here's a bunch of Ramaria corals. Here's assorted different, like green russulas, which sometimes we eat. That looks like a green quilted one there. Okay, and here we have orange lactarius, probably Lactarius deliciosus. Bunch of bluets up here. These look like Gymnopus dryophilus, probably. Looks like we got a cauliflower mushroom here. Okay, here are some of those big Russula breva peas. And let's see what else have we got here. Here's some of those, looks like Clatosabe giba, right there and there, and maybe some other ones. Okay, anyway, so that's just, there were even many more than that. And well, let's see, I think I got another slide coming up. Oh yeah. So look at these big, huge, this is Pleurotus levis, which we do find in Minnesota. I have eaten it maybe once and don't think I'll eat it again, but it's big and it's beautiful and it's, they like it. And also here's some, whoops, let me go back. Wait a minute. Okay, some really beautiful parasol mushrooms here. And then these black ones. So this happens to be Old Man of the Woods. Okay. All right, so here is that scaly vase woolly chanterelle turbinellus flaccosus. So what's interesting to me about this is the most popular and most widely marketed mushroom in Mexico. And why is that? Well, one of the reasons is that they know how to cook it in a way which makes it good. And I won't go into the process, but you know, they do specially prepare it. But the other reason that it is such a popular mushroom is because it has such a long, being big and meaty like that, it can have a really long shelf value, if you want to call it that, like at the markets. So this one, you'll see this really a lot in the mushroom markets. And here is the other one of their favorites, the fried chicken mushroom, big cespitose bunch of those, Lyophilum species. I don't know if I don't think it's Decastes, but probably pretty similar. And I think we did have some of those in some of our meals. And this I'm putting up here because this really surprised me. So this symbol, this big green mushroom, that's a sign of edibility. And this would really scare off most of us in terms of edibility, as well as most. I mean, you know, people in Minnesota, we don't mess with amanitas at all, hardly. But anyway, so this mushroom here is formerly Amanita thiersii. They just changed the name of it, like they're changing other names all over. But okay, now it's called Saproamanita because it turns out that these mushrooms, and there's another, they divided, they came up with a new genera, Saproamanita. These are amanitas that are saprobic, or they're decomposers as opposed to being mycorrhizal. Okay, and they really like that mushroom. It's probably really good if you know what you're doing, but it is frighteningly similar to Amanita smithiana, which is a really severely toxic amanita. So here is a mushroom basket with some edible mushrooms, and some of these may surprise us. They're saying that there's that chlorophyllum molybdites, which looks like that one. I think. And apparently they know how to eat it and not get sick. And then we have some clavaceous or puffballs in there. So that this looks like maybe one of the purple spored puffballs, clavaceous, cyathoformis. Here's some of those Amanita or the Thiersii ones there. There is a nice agaricus. And this is really surprising, some sclerodermas. So we would certainly not eat sclerodermas, but there are at least one species that they consider edible. Okay. And I had to put this in here because this was just astounding to me, the size of those parasol mushrooms. Okay, so back to Ongeros Shiikaku, this group. So one of the things they are doing is actually, so that there was a woman, yeah, I mentioned that she was a member of the ethnic group that started this group. And so they are using mycotourism as a way to help indigenous communities, but also in a way in which the habitat is preserved, the cultures are preserved, and this is happening in other places in Mexico, mycotourism. So that is happening now. Okay, so the Mexican mycocultural heritage, the future. So the main thing is keep that knowledge alive and preserve and maintain the cultures and the languages, conserve the ecosystems, and promote autonomy, sustainable development, and teach the children. So in our series of lectures that we had, there were some educators there that were showing classes with grade school kids surrounded by mushrooms, and they were learning to identify the mushrooms. They were learning what the mushrooms did, and that is a wonderful thing. And I think that it seemed to me that they're ahead of us, so we need to model them on that. So I believe that is all I have. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so there's gonna be a little bit of duplicate stuff as Ron, I and Heather talk, but some of these photos are just, I think, too neat to not share. So this is the University of Mexico again, and this is Heather's also going to be showing some stuff, so I won't get too much into this, but we saw a lot of cactus and a lot of biodiversity that exists throughout Mexico. I was absolutely amazed at the fact that Mexico City is a very wet, cool area, and cactus grow great there. It just requires very well-drained soil so that the water doesn't sit in the roots and it passes straight through. But yeah, I was just absolutely amazed at the diversity. And the next thing to comment about, we saw a really big prickly pear cactus tree. I mean, this thing was like a massive tree. And they were telling us about a bug that lives on this tree that was worth more than silver or gold when the Spanish conquistadors came to Mexico. And this is called the cochineal or cochineal bug. And it was used to create carmine red food dye. It's a type of red dye it's a type of red dye number 4. and it exists in red licorice, a lot of different foods, red lipstick. So if you wear red lipstick, you're probably have bugs on your lips. Hopefully that doesn't gross anyone out. But this is an edible bug that has a bright red color, and it's been used for centuries. What you see on the screen is a prickly pear flower bud and not actually the bug, but the bug probably would be about the same size. We looked really hard. We weren't able to find any of these bugs, but they're very, very tiny. This is kind of a neat 360-degree view that's all flattened of one of the areas in this kind of biodiversity park area. And it's just kind of a really cool photo. Don't have much to say about it. These are the first mushrooms we found. Didn't see a lot of mushrooms in this location. And of the ones that we found were probably typical yard mushrooms, little brown mushrooms, LBMs. But they are the first ones we found, and the group got really excited because, hey, we're there for mushrooms. After leaving the university, we went to a different location. Again, I'm forgetting the exact name of it, but Heather will talk more about it. At this location, we found an axolotl. They had a tank with a couple of them, and they are a critically endangered species that is really, they're a very important icon of Mexico and Mexico City, and they're very important to the Aztec. So this particular one is from Zacapu, Michoacan, Mexico, an elevation of about 2,000 feet. And it's pronounced axolotl in the Nahuatl Aztec language. Very, very cool. You see symbols of this all over the place in Mexico City. And later on, we went to Monstruo de Agua, which has this axolotl all over the place. And it's named after the axolotl, water monster. Which water monsters, I believe, what the Spanish named it or thought it was, kind of what they named it. They misinterpreted the Aztec language a little bit. This is a little bit more kind of a picture of the bar, and Heather will talk more about it as well. Here we have the Brightside Ewok Village from Star Wars. Wait, no, this is Rotavento. It looked kind of like that though. I mean, the trees are enormously tall, and they have these really cool canopy houses or cabins kind of throughout the forest. And it just had this really airy feel to it. It was a magical place. And there were mushrooms everywhere. So these are the first few mushrooms I found there. I think the first one is probably a slime mold on the left. And I don't know what the ones in the middle are called. The one on the right is a cordyceps, and it's one of two different species that I know that we found. Unfortunately, I don't remember the exact name of the species of cordyceps. And this one was growing on a beetle. I don't have a picture of that, but more to come on the cordyceps. So that night, they showed us at the first kind of big talk that we had, they showed us all the different ethnic groups that Ron talked about, and in the state of Mexico specifically, and their distribution, as well as they showed the distribution of the biomes of the state of Mexico and Toluca. Yeah, it was amazing. Mostly, I would say mostly it's a lot of old pine forests, but there's a lot of farm fields where people were either where there was grassland or people were able to cut out farms in the valleys of the mountains. So the next day we went to San Francisco, and which was this really, I should say I went to San Francisco. The other two, we were in two separate groups, and the other two went to San Antonio the first day. And we both had different experiences at both towns or both villages as well. I had a forest protection ceremony in this little gazebo off to the right. And here I just want to show, I think this is either the school or the school is directly behind. I think the school might be directly behind this photo. But I just wanted to show there was a lot of color that we saw everywhere. Color was just impressive. And murals, you see the mural on the back walls. So art, really important. I'm gonna now share a short video of the prayer sermon, or the forest protection ceremony.
Pues mucha cate socowi, te shukata Daniel, o Daniel Sima, chetani poquiro en choribo tununijani. Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Daniel Sima. Sean bienvenidos aquí a San Francisco, tierra Matlatzinca, sean bienvenidos aquí, todos, pues sean...
Hi everybody, he is Daniel and he is the guide, and first he talked in Matlatzinca. It's the language from here. It's a language unique for here. It's unique in all Mexico. It's unique language. And
sí, y sean bienvenidos nuevamente. Les vamos a presentar los guías que van a estar acompañándolos el día de hoy, que es... Hi, my name is Vicente.
Hola Vicente.
Hola Vicente.
Hola Vicente. Ay, mi nombre es Carolina.
hola. Ay, mi nombre es Moni.
Moni. Ellos van a ser los guías el día de hoy. Cualquier duda o comentario con ellos son los expertos.
Any question with the staff?
Okay. Y pues sean bienvenidos. Le vamos a presentar al jefe supremo, que es una de las personas que nos representa a nivel nacional e internacional con sus acompañantes.
He is the
Person
a very important person in the community because it's
Jefe supremo.
the boss of the religion from here. Entonces, he will do a ceremony about the permission to the forest.
Ajá, sí. Sí, entonces les paso a poner primero y después ya los demás. ¿Cuál es tu primero? ¿Cómo gustas? Ajá, sí, sí.
Uchecate Socowe. Aquí Tesho, José Isabel González Benítez. Aquí está jefe supremo, Bajo Quema Clasinca. Tampoco te tuyo de Juan Pante Tantani, Pante Goods. Y Chetani. Bienvenidos a todos. Buenos días. Mi nombre es José Isabel González Benítez, yo soy el jefe supremo, nosotros los Maclacincas. Bienvenidos. Chente hom, chente millat. Chente hom, chente millat, chiri kiri khandam. Nanto tsong ha ga khabe ti khobu je para ga chobu. Ga khabi gi khwenje baki ga khabi. Baki what man. Chi chente hom, chente millat kiri kh.
Sí.
Usted sería el máster vos.
Y al rato se lo come.
Ah, sí. Uy, uy, uy. Sí, soy panero.
De corazón.
Sí.
Se las dimos, hombre.
All right. So after the forest protection ceremony, we went up a really a difficult road, a very narrow, rough, steep mountain road, and our drivers were incredibly talented. I'll leave it at that. And some people even got sick, either going up or coming down. And yeah, it was quite the experience. I made it okay, but I would say just barely. So once we got to the top, we saw this huge plateau, and it was a horse pasture. Yeah, and we just went into the woods and we looked for mushrooms. And I think for time, people can go see this pan. And there's a short shot of the meal that we had on top as well. And did everyone see? I think I put it in the links into the chat. If not, I'll put the links into the chat again at the end of my presentation. Here's a couple of mushrooms that we found in this area. I thought on the far right side, I thought for sure I'd found chanterelle. I was so surprised. They're not. They're false chanterelles. Some more different kind of mushrooms that I'd found up there. And this was probably the highlight of finding mushrooms for me here. This was Amanita basie. And I got to try a little bit of these because this is one of the few mushrooms that you can just eat raw. And they're pretty good raw. They taste kind of like salad a little bit. They're watery and they don't have a whole lot of flavor, but they don't taste bad. They taste pretty good. And cooked, they are absolutely phenomenal. One of the best mushrooms I've ever had. Some other mushrooms that are very, very tiny, and I got some good macro shots of. And that plateau that we were on was also known as the psilocybin kind of capital of the world. And we found three different, between the two groups, we found three different kinds of psilocybin on, I believe, that mountain. And on the far left side is psilocybin aztecorum. And all of these are psychoactive mushrooms. One of the most common psilocybin species is psilocybin cubenensis, which is the one in the middle. And then the one on the right is psilocybin mexicana. And I believe it's either mexicana or aztecorum that is rare, possibly both rare. And if anyone does have the question of anyone eating these, the answer is no. These were for science. And they were checked into the University of Mexico. Here I found a blue stain bolete. And it was growing on a creosote log. And then there were lots of giant parasol mushrooms all over the place. A lot of people found them. This happens to be one that I found. Then the next day we went to San Antonio. And San Antonio is another gorgeous village with lots of cornfields surrounding it. Another short video to show. This one is shorter.
Here we are, Doña Ceci is going to perform for us the ceremony that I just explained. Our host today is Ceci, obviously, Esteban, one of the creators of the Feria del Hongo, a very important person in the community who pushes for things to happen. A wonderful lady, Delfina. Saul, one of the few kids that not only speaks, but he also is one of the people that really knows how to write in Mazahua. He's the one helping us to do the posters. We're trying to do a stand so where people can go write their names in Mazahua and stuff. And another one of the elders, great guy, walked with him a lot. Don Roberto knows the mountains really well. So,
how would you like us to?
She's gonna do the prayer. If anybody wants to record her and get on the side, so the other ones don't, it's fine. She has no issues, te puedes grabar, ¿no? And she's gonna do the prayer, and right after that, she'll clean us with some copal. Each of us.
Perfecto, gracias.
Gracias, Ceci.
Pok me ya ranus come la copa me gira me ko pok me gira me la za algo me para kit come un rama para kit come me pok me ya
Traduzco que sea la realidad y ya me gusta salir.
Si quieres, ahorita me dices si lo están haciendo.
Ah, bueno. Échale.
¿Yo?
Sí, lo que estamos pidiendo es permiso para poder entrar al bosque. Se le pide permiso a los guardianes también para poder obtener los frutos que produce el bosque, como los hongos, bueno, en este caso los hongos, pero es una ceremonia que se hace para entrar con confianza y que no tengamos por ahí algún incidente.
So we are asking the spirits of the forest to allow us to find the fruits of the forest, the mushrooms, and everything else, as well as asking them to protect us in the traditions of the forefathers. This is what we ask, that they guard us so there's no accidents when we walk the forest.
All right. Yeah, so that we went into this mountain as well, found even more mushrooms. I would say I feel like we found even more edible mushrooms at this village than maybe the other one, but we definitely found edible mushrooms and non-edible mushrooms at both. Mushrooms everywhere. That part was absolutely incredible. This day it also rained quite a bit. It rained at both locations. And I have a video that actually shows just before the rain hit, and these dogs followed me everywhere I went on this mountain. It felt at times like I wasn't sure if they were trying to protect me or herd me. Kind of felt more the latter, like they were trying to herd me around. But they definitely stayed by myself as well as the rest of the group. Another short video.
Not, no.
With me.
It's mycological ethnic.
Okay, so this tree is what they've used this tree for the last 4 years. It's a sacrificial tree in which they're taking the sap and using it in a ceremony that they have on June 21st, on the night of June 21st every year. They collect the sap, they cut the tree. They've done it 4 years so far. They'll only do it one more time before they leave this to die on its own. But they take the sap and they'll actually create lines, the resin, and they'll create lines which will light on fire. And so those there'll be fire, like fire for the ceremonies.
Smell, huh? Well, copal is also a
resin. Yep.
Right. So I wonder if they dry. They probably dry it before.
Well,
they set
for
it on
copal,
fire.
it has to be
Or
completely
they're collecting it.
hard and dry.
Yes, right. I'm imagining.
And
it's
now we are
similar
changing
here.
the definition for it. Copal
And
from
I'm
now
collecting
on
it
is
so
not
we
going to
can
be any
light some
resin.
later and you can
It's
smell
only
it.
going to be
I
beginning
got
with
permission from
fossilized
the
resin,
community to do this.
like in Santander in Colombia. This will just be hard resin.
All right, the rain is coming.
All right. And as we were descending, the mountain, we found this, or I found this really large mushroom that was probably 3-4 feet across. Don't have anything to really give good scale. This thing was massive. And I asked the local guide what they call it. And the translation I got was larvae mushroom. Yeah, some kind of Ganoderma, maybe, but that was really huge. So we vouchered as many mushrooms as we could get through. I bet we didn't even voucher half or fully get recorded and identified even half of everything that we found. So future groups, you'll have all kinds of opportunity to possibly find brand new mushrooms that possibly have never been seen before, as well as get voucher ID and voucher to the University of Mexico, things that didn't happen in 2023. So I think any future travels to this area will be amazing, super valuable, and great for science. And the pictures I'm showing here still is not all the mushrooms that we found. I would say it's a good representation of what the table looked like, but we did have one more table that's not shown here that was full of mushrooms as well. Yeah, so one of the coolest things we found is this grub. It's a giant stag beetle, and the grubs were coming out and getting ready to turn into beetles. So these grubs were kind of everywhere at Rotavento. And we found that the grubs themselves can be parasiticized by cordyceps. And as we were leaving the hotel, on our way back to Mexico City, someone did find this cordyceps. It was pretty large. I would say maybe 4 inches tall. And it was growing on this grub. Not the grub on the far left. That one is very much alive, but the one in the middle and the right, quite dead. And the cordyceps mushroom turns the grub or beetle into kind of like a zombie, and they seek out a nice moist place to die, and then the mushroom grows out of their head. This is a cool piece of mushroom art that Heather Brooks, not MMS's Heather, but Heather Brooks, who's from, I believe, New York. She made this. It was pretty cool. Ron talked about the fact that we made a big meal, and on the left-hand side is all the foraged mushrooms that we found, and they were ID'd to make sure that they were indeed safe edible mushrooms before being cooked. Many of the mushrooms that you're seeing in the middle were purchased just so that we would have enough mushrooms for the meal. But there's mushroom stalls over the place that you can buy all kinds of different mushrooms, that a lot of them are foraged by the native indigenous people. Here's some pictures of us preparing the meal. There's Heather making some tortillas, and I was chopping up a lot of stuff, as well as the rest. There's about 40 of us, and we all, I wouldn't say all, but most of us participated in the making of the meal. And almost done. It's the last video.
Le voy a ir poniendo los tomates conforme voy agarrando la pasta, ¿de acuerdo?
Yarn dyeing. Hey, yeah, so we're now towards the end of the trip. We're on our way home, and I'm just going to show a few short pictures of just kind of what the landscape looked like. And this is one cool thing that was pointed out to us, was a mountain that they call the Elephant. It does kind of look like an elephant. It's a shopping area alongside the freeway or highway that we were on. And the very last night, we, not very many of us, I think there's maybe only 5 of us, after the last restaurant that we went to, which again, Heather will talk about, I got to go to, and thank you, Zach, Sueva de la Achalat, which is, it's a hidden kind of nightclub dance hall that is owned by Monstro de Agua. And yeah, you walk in and it looks like a laundromat. And just you tell them you're there for the dancing, and they open up one of the like dryer washing machines, and it kind of forms a door, and you walk through, and it's kind of like a speakeasy, and you walk through, and then there's a bar and this little dance area in the middle, and a lot of Ashalat artwork sprinkled throughout. It's very, very neat. And this is our group. Everyone, I think, had a blast. Fortunately, we did have a little bit of, 2 people did get COVID during the trip and had limited participation. And I feel really bad for those, for them. But at the same time, for the most part, everyone had a really great time, and sickness was fairly minimal. That is all I have. Next, I'm gonna stop sharing and let Heather present.
So thanks to the fact that my traveling companions were so thorough, my talk is a lot shorter. So I'm also going to be just mostly covering some of the logistics of what it was like to go on this trip. Because I'm not as great of a mushroom photographer as Aaron, and I'm not as scientific as Ron. So I'll do what I do. This was our first hotel in Mexico City. It was Hotel Mexico Condesa. You can get a single room, but I actually really enjoyed having a roommate for 2 reasons. 1, it's more affordable, and 2, you get to meet someone new. This is my roommate, Sarah. In this picture, she's handing out masks because due to COVID concerns, we masked when we were in a vehicle together. And I could not have had a better roommate. She was interesting, knowledgeable, and considerate. And when we moved from one city to the next, we kept the same roommate, which was nice. And I just thought I would include some of these kinds of details because I know before I went on the trip, I really didn't know what to expect about those kinds of aspects of traveling on this foray. And I was just really impressed with how they handled everything. This is one of the things I really appreciated. This was UNAM, Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico Botanical Gardens. Couple of the really interesting things we learned were there are almost 2,000 species of cacti, and almost half of them are in Mexico. On the far right, you can see agave. This is used to make tequila, mezcal, and pulque. Pulque you'll hear about in a little bit here. Also, there are 100 species of pine in the world, as Aaron showed you that map of all of the different things that, the different kinds of trees and stuff. Well, 50 of those species, so half of them are in Mexico, and 15 of them grow pine nuts. After we visited the gardens, we went to the UNAM Biodiversity Pavilion, and this was a lot of fun. And for me, it was really cool to see that my Spanish was actually working, like all the time that I had spent learning Spanish. I could understand all the signage and I could read it fairly quickly with a thorough understanding. But if you don't know Spanish, it's okay because the tour guides, they had a really great, they spoke English very well and it was fascinating. So this was really a great time in Mexico City. Then we had an amazing lunch at a restaurant called Foray, and this was a sign of things to come. We were not in Kansas anymore. It seemed like everything that we would eat on this trip was made of mushrooms that were used in amazing and inventive ways. And we were the only people in the restaurant for these exclusive myco meals. And that would be something that we would experience a few times on this trip. And it was just so cool. So you can see at the top here, we had this flatbread with mushrooms and some basil and a vinaigrette. And then on the lower left, we had like an inverted pizza, sort of like a, what do we call those? You know, one of those pizza pocket type things. But anyhow, it was filled with mushrooms. And on the lower right, it's mushroom ice cream, porcini ice cream. And I'm not kidding you, it was incredible. Mushroom desserts, I found I really loved on this trip. They were fantastic. This is El Monstruo de Agua, named for the axolotl. And it's El Monstruo is really part of a bigger project to support local agriculture. They make craft beers and use local cuisine. And so that was pretty cool to learn about that. And also we had the privilege of enjoying another fungi-focused meal with beer pairings for each course. And huitlacoche, which somebody did mention in the chat, was in our starter, and I loved it. And one of the things that they said was to really have a good huitlacoche dish, you need to pair it with, you have to have the fresh corn as well in with it. And then they had some really good cheese in there and peanuts, and it was that melted in my mouth. It was a really wonderful experience. Then on day 3, we drove 2 to 3 hours to our next destination, which was Valle De Bravo. And this was beautiful. It was in the mountains. And one thing I should note was how fantastic the weather was in Mexico. In Minnesota at the time, we were enduring a heat wave. And in Mexico, it was quite temperate and comfortable. I mean, here it was like 100 degrees every day that we were gone, and there it was beautiful 75 degrees. It was gorgeous. So I was a little concerned about if it was going to be really hot, and it wasn't. It was wonderful. And Valle de Bravo was even cooler than Mexico City because it was the rainy season. It was gorgeously green. We stayed at Hotel Rovento, and you can see that on the left side, and Aaron showed a picture like this as well. And on the right, you can see the interior of our room, and those are king size beds. It's a little deceptive because of the way that it's angled, but they were spacious. They smelled amazing, and I loved it. So this is a map of the area, and these are all individual little, basically little casitas, little rooms up along the mountain. And one thing that was a little shocking to some of us was that getting to these rooms was a test of your physical fitness because it was a steep climb up to, to go up to your room. So some people did need to get a ride to and from, well, not so much from. Going down was fine, but going up to their room could be tricky. I could tell after just a few days there how much my endurance had improved. So there were mushrooms everywhere. So the benefit of enduring the difficult hike was finding an abundance of mushrooms everywhere that you looked. And every night we would gather for a delicious meal followed by a presentation by mycologists from the area. The mushrooms that we gathered were vouchered and collected. They would be collected on the tables, and Aaron showed you a picture of that. So one thing that I was kind of moved by was that in 1959, Dwight D. Eisenhower started the People to People Committee on Nature, and NAMA was a part of that. And since then, we've had national forays every single year except 2020 due to COVID. And since 1997, we've been collecting specimens for the Chicago Field Museum of Natural History. And our vouchered specimens that we vouchered for this project would go there, or to, I think it was UNAM, but to Mexico for their for their records. So it was pretty cool. And here's Zach, and you'll see him later. But on day 4, we headed to San Antonio de Laguna, where we foraged with the Masagua community. And it really was amazing how many different mushrooms that we found. This is one of our guides taking a break. We stopped kind of midway through our foray. And Chef Daniel is here on the right, and he is sharing prickly pear with us. This is the fruit of the nopal. There are 116 species of nopales, but they only use 12 of them for food. They're really nutritious. They can lower blood sugar. And as Aaron said, the bugs on them are used to make dye. And they're even being used to clean up environmental pollution. After the foray, we regrouped at the home of our guides, where the women of the village made a feast, and we ate pulque bread. So that's bread made with pulque, which is this beverage that you see here on the right. And they also made us tacos de hongos and tamales steamed with grass and fresh corn leaves, rather than what we typically see where they're in dried corn husks. And we drank pulque, which is a fermented alcoholic beverage made from the agave. It's kind of a light alcoholic beverage, sort of like a what is it called? Oh, I don't remember. It's okay.
Kombucha?
Yes, kombucha. Yeah. Very similar. Actually, it reminded me a lot of kombucha. This is a photo that I took on the way back to Hotel Raventa, just because it really captured the beauty of Mexico. When I was getting ready to go, a lot of people were like, "You're going to look for mushrooms in Mexico? It's a desert." And so many people think of it that way, but it's a huge country with a vast range of ecosystems. And the Mexico that we visited was anything but a desert. It was the perfect place to find mushrooms. And of course, we went during the rainy season, so it did rain each evening that we were there. It was really refreshing and beautiful. And because of that, you see all this gorgeous green, landscape. It was really lovely. And this is a picture of when we went to and I can't remember which if this is San Francisco, but when we went there, our blessing ceremony was held actually in front of this place where they had this big giant eucalyptus tree, and they weren't sure how the eucalyptus tree got there, but it was huge. And they gave us these pulque bread necklaces in the shape of mushrooms, and they were also delicious trail snacks. And let's see here. We could tell this was going to be a rainy hike, so we got out our rain gear right away. You definitely want to bring rain gear on this trip. And you can see our own Ron Spinoza here in this picture here. And here's Zach. He was one of our leaders. And in this photo, you can see some of the deep ravines that we would go through. And it actually extends lower even than what this photo can show. And we were hiking in and out of these throughout the hike. But that day, I could tell how much stronger I had gotten on this trip, because it just wasn't such a big deal for me to do that. And like the first day I got to Mexico, I don't think I could have done that. So it was pretty cool. It was really like being in a wonderland. I mean, we were seeing mushrooms everywhere, and they were beautiful. And they were mushrooms that we didn't typically see here in Minnesota anyway. And it was just a really magical experience. Now, on this day, it poured by the time we were done with our foray. And so it was thundering and lightning, pouring down in buckets. They had this tarp over us. and made us this really amazing meal of tamales and rice. And actually on the right, those are really delicious greens that are kind of covered in a red sauce. And so it was really good to have something warm in our tummies. And then there's Ron, and he's showing off a mushroom that he found, which had been, it was hypomycete. So I don't remember what it's called, and I couldn't pronounce it anyway when he told me. So that's okay. That's why I left the science to him. Now here on day 6, we have that feast that Aaron showed you that great video of. And the professional chefs actually came from the restaurants that we had eaten at over the week. And they gave us cooking lessons. And here's Ron making tortillas. So that was a lot of fun. Here we are back in Mexico City, all dressed up to go to the fanciest restaurant we had been to yet. There was mushroom art everywhere on the walls. I mean, we had sculptures. Here are, actual Ganodermas all over the walls and pictures, and it was just so cool. And that was because they did mushrooms, and they only did mushrooms, and they did them really, really well. So the food here was so incredible. I don't even remember what they were called, but I can still remember the taste. I'm not kidding you. Especially the dessert. This was a candied amanita, and that's cream with like black pepper on it. Everything was so perfectly balanced. And they had options also, like if you did have some food issues, like if you needed to be dairy free, they had options for that. It was the perfect last meal in Mexico. And I would highly recommend this trip for anybody who loves mushrooms. There is nothing like it. You will learn so much and experience things that you've never experienced before. I've traveled to many, many countries in the world, and this was the trip of a lifetime. And to a great extent, that was because of all of the care that went into planning it. And, one little word about what Aaron said about a couple of people getting COVID. The care that the planners took to ensure our safety surrounding that. I mean, when you only have 2 people on the trip, that was phenomenal. It was so. It was really, really nice to be able to go on a trip and get through it, not only just being safe and doing okay, but coming home and feeling like, wow, I would love to go on that the next chance I get. So if you get a chance, do it. You won't be sorry you did it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. So anyway, that's my presentation. Brevity is my strong point.
Thank you, all of you. I love seeing the same trip through 3 different people's eyes. And I would love, there's a few questions in the chat that seem like they've been answered along the way. But we also have Zachary Hunter Williams here, who was the organizer of the trip, and he's living down there. And I think he could share even more flavor if we want to open it up for questions for anyone. Let's see.
Doesn't look like I can turn on my video, but I assure you I'm here.
Awesome. Perfect. And Heather, you were saying if you ever get a chance to do this, take it. And there is a chance because NAMA is doing this trip again for 2024. I believe, Zach, you're going to have to help me. Is it in July again, or is it early August?
Early August.
Oh,
August
yep.
3rd through 9th.
Awesome.
I just put the link to the info page and that the Fungivore website is mine. Hi, everyone. For those who haven't met me, probably most of you. My name is Zachary. My wife and I My wife Kimberly, who was in the video that Aaron showed, and I are somehow in our 6th year of doing tours in Mexico, which is kind of mind blowing. The last 3 years really have been much more intense than we did one sort of the first 2019, 2021. But we were so excited to go this year. Last year, as these guys I mean, I was almost in tears. Some of the shots were like bringing back like just like peak memories, like the blessing of the forest in Lagunas. Yeah, really, Aaron, your videos are stunning, absolutely stunning. And thank you guys, especially Heather, what you said at the end about the care that we put in. I have to give credit to Kim. She is like so attentive to needs that haven't even come up yet. And it's really phenomenal to work so well together. And as Aaron said, it's a whole new world. It really is. And I'm gonna keep my comments short here because I'm presenting via NAMA in a webinar on February 20th. And much more in depth about sort of our experience in Mexico, and it's entitled Lessons from Mexico, and sort of looking at a compare and contrast on how we approach mushrooms in the US and in Canada, and how the mushroom culture in Mexico is both ancient but also very modern and developing as everywhere. And the mushroom mania is not skipped over Mexico at all either. So if anyone has any questions, I'll put my email in the chat as well. And yeah, there is an early bird discount on this tour until the end of March. We actually extended it. It was going to be until Valentine's Day on Wednesday, but we extended it to the end of the month. For those who register, you can apply on the website, get to tell us a little bit about yourself. And yeah, that's about that. Unless these guys have any other specific questions I can answer.
I think I was just going to comment that, yeah, that there is a questionnaire. And I think that's just to kind of, it's like a way of sharing information to make sure you are interested once you understand kind of what's involved. So don't be overwhelmed to fill out a questionnaire to kind of get more.
We have the application for several reasons. One of them is it allows us to get to know people a little more. If people could just pay for their trip, you really don't know what's coming. We collect information on allergies. We do ask for some community agreements, such as that everyone will bring at least 2 COVID tests with them, and understands that that's going to be something that will be implemented publicly as part of our safety protocol. And it kind of gives a more granular look at some of the risks and some of the and also gives you an opportunity to say, if you're traveling with someone, it gives us a lot of information about you, and a great place for us to start writing personal emails to you and answering questions that you might have. Nobody that filled out the application last year did not. It says it's not a guarantee of attendance. That is, nobody that applied that wanted to go last year did not get to go. So we do have a capacity. We are expanding that capacity this year to a maximum of 75 registered attendees. The hotel can handle up to 130 people, and that will give us the opportunity to bring in more experts and to give some more scholarships to some of the local Mexicans here. It also allows us to extend our time at Rotavento, which is really exciting, and include the phenomenal spa circuit that I don't think very many people got to go in last year. So that's actually part of this luxury hotel package, which I think will be its own a conference of itself. We found chanterelles and the stocked pleuroides back behind the sort of entrance to the spa last year, and yeah, it's a whole different fairyland of wonder. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and catch me on the 20th, and that information is also on the website.
Perfect. I will get everyone the NAMA webinar link in case you guys want to join that. And then I do see a couple more questions in the chat. Adele says, great job, everyone. And what spices did you use when you cooked with the local chefs?
I can try. So there's a lot of chilies, a lot of different chilies used. Some spicy, some not spicy, some extremely spicy. Especially there was an indigenous, like a cold indigenous salad that was kind of near the end, very close to the end of the video that I showed of all the food. That was very, very hot. It is not for most people, but it was good. As far as spices, and I know they use spices, but a lot of the spices I think maybe came from the back. Not all the food was prepared directly in front of us. So you can look at the video that I showed and you'll see everything that we saw, everything that was sitting out, all the different spices. But there wasn't a lot of spices that we saw. It was mostly fresh.
That's what I felt like. Like, for example, there was this really good Caesar Amanita ceviche, but it was really almost like a really loose guacamole. Where the avocados were, it was just really loose rather than being tight like we usually eat guacamole. It was real liquidy, but then the Caesar Amanitas were in there. And that was really good on the chips and stuff. Now there was something that I've made since I've come home, and we don't have any pictures of it. I really regret not bringing my camera into this roadside restaurant that we stopped at. But a dish they had that was so simple and so amazing was like a tomato soup, but it was just a real fresh, lots of tomato in it, and it was filled with oyster mushrooms, and it was so good. And so one time I had an abundance of oyster mushrooms from from cultivating, and I made that, and it was just like transporting back there. It was so delicious. So it was like, you want to have garlic and onions in there, but it wasn't really a spice. It was more of that fresh, just the fresh ingredients, and absolutely delicious. That was one of my favorite dishes on the whole trip. And it was something I was able to recreate when I got home, and that was pretty cool. So
I'd love to dovetail off that. So the cooking class that they're talking about, we're getting into the granular details. For me, was one of the highlights of something that I've been really wanting to do since I've been attending mushroom festivals and associations and clubs and camps, which is to get the food away from the one chef demoing and having people taste it to really involving everyone, so that you can get your hands on and really experience what cooking a mushroom is like. And I feel like, and the chefs at Rotavento also, after about 3 hours, they came over to me and they're like, dude, you talked about doing this 16 months ago and we're doing it now. I just want you to know next year we're in. No matter what you want to do, we're in. And I'm happy to announce that this coming year, Joaquin from Loot Bar, who is a former 2-star Michelin chef in Europe, and Laura Cardenas from the vegan Pink Taco Bar, who uses strictly oyster mushrooms to make her pastor, are going to be running the food program and coordinating with the chefs at Rotavento. So there's a whole different level of sinking in as to what I think is going to be happening this year. I'm really excited to this is the first time that's gotten out. That's not public info, but it is now. So
I wanted to, so people asked about the dates again. I put it in the chat. And also, Zach has tours, mushroom tours. Some are food-based, some are fibers, dyeing, embroidery. So his website, I believe he posted in the chat. I just reposted it. But the NAMA webinar is in this link as well, and a link to register for that. So if you go to the link that's in the chat right now, you can read all about not just the trip that NAMA is offering, but some of the other ones, if those dates don't work for you. Or, Zach, you might want to talk about, you're doing some of the mushroom dyeing or the eco dyeing with, plants and mushrooms and stuff.
Well, actually, we just recorded an info call with Alyssa immediately before this chat, actually, and it is currently uploading to our YouTube. So Kathy, I can send that to you if you want to share it with the club. But that's sort of a nice straight cut. It's primarily about Oaxaca, obviously, because that's where we do our tours primarily. But I think it's a pretty great. It tells a lot more than I can tell in this short period. But yeah, long story short, we're doing 5 tours, 4 of which are in Oaxaca, other than the Nama tour, and 1 is in Chiapas. We have some really awesome experts lined up with us as well. So our smaller tours are 12 people maximum, and we bring like 1 expert for the whole week. And so for our Ixtlan and for Chiapas, we have Christian Schwartz joining us. For the mycolores, which is the mycodyeing, Alyssa Allen from Mycopigments and Mushroom and Lichen Dyers United is coming back for her 3rd year with us, which is really exciting. And our local friend and mycologist who's from Guadalajara, Iñaki, will be coming back to join us again for our very first tour, our kickoff tour in July in Oaxaca. And you can read more about those on the website too, if you like.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. Thanks for giving us some flavor. It's fun to hear it through different people's eyes and taste buds, even though we all just get to look at the pictures of the food. Lots of people are mentioning the ice cream and are really interested in mushroom ice cream. So I think that's a very fun way to end a lovely mushroom meal.